Welcome, everyone, to our event, A Hitchhiker's Guide to SAP Fiori User Experience and its Technologies. Thank you for joining. I'm Tanya from the Global User Groups organization and your host for today. This session will be very interactive, so keep your fingers poised on your keyboard. We have planned time for Q&A, but in case there are too many questions, we will take them with us and answer them in the comments area within the next few days. Also, the slides will be made available to you in the description of this video. Also here, please give us a few days to upload the PDF. And now, I have the pleasure of introducing our expert, Oliver Greve. Oliver is Director, Product Management for SAP UI5. He held various positions in development, as well as in project and product management. Oliver is passionate about engaging with customers and spreading knowledge on SAP technologies. And with this, Oliver, over to you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. Welcome to this session, to the Hitchhiker's Guide to SAP Fiori User Experience and its Technologies. I'm glad to have this session today with you, and let's start right away. This is important, and this is our agenda for today. So this is a 2-hour session, a bit different to other webinars, because actually we have a lot of content to be covered. It's about your user experience and how to realize this, the technologies and the tools involved. And we are planning to have this in 2 parts. So the first part, and somewhere in the middle, we want to do a break. And in this break, you can either have your break and have a coffee, or have a little hands-on exercise. And we'll let you know how this will work. This should be roughly in the middle of the session, 10 minutes, your decision whether to do a break or a little hands-on session. And then afterwards, the second half and a Q&A at the end. So, off we go. Why is this called a Hitchhiker's Guide? It is because actually I'm a fan of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is a science fiction story created in the 70s, and it was originally a BBC Radio 4 radio comedy. And I'm the proud owner of a compact disc of this BBC radio series. So it's really good. I can recommend this. It's the adventures of Arthur Dent. Arthur Dent was surprised one day because the Earth got destroyed by aliens to make room for a hyperspace bypass. So in the last moment, Arthur Dent was rescued and is traveling the galaxy with aliens and friends, and lots of interesting things are happening. And on his travels, he has an electronic guidebook. It's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I'm also the proud owner, not sure if you can see this, of the original book, because this radio series was also turned into a book. And this book should resemble a bit the Hitchhiker's Guide. And at the back of the book, it says, "Don't panic." So if Arthur then starts panicking because he's in some weird situation with aliens, he's always reminded to not panic. So I thought this is a good metaphor for what we do when dealing with SAP Fiori. So I took this as the motto of this session. So don't panic. Let's start. Let me just know maybe that I can have a little understanding of who you are. Can you share in the chat, in the YouTube chat, are you a developer or no developer? Can you share that in the chat, please? Let me just know maybe that I can have a little. Is that something you can share in the chat? Yes, yeah. It works. Can you share, are you a developer, software developer of any kind, or are you no developer? I can tell you that we have content for both, so no worries. I see mostly developers, but also some UX designer, no developers. Very good. I think we have a nice mixture. That's perfect for this session. So I have another one. Please, if you are a developer, can you share how many Fiori apps have you developed? Just put the number in the chat. Is it 0, 1, 2, 3, 10? Just put the number of Fiori apps you have developed in the chat. Is it 0, 1, 2, 10 Fiori apps? Just let me know in the chat how many Fiori apps have you developed. I see 0, 10. Very good. So we have beginners. That's obvious, but we also have some experience here. Some of you have developed 10 Fiori apps or other applications, 20 plus, I see. 20. So we do have some experience here. $30 plus, I see. Very nice. Very good. Thank you very much. So I have a rough understanding who I'm talking to. So let's continue with our session. Let's start with Fiori user experience. Why do we deal with all these technologies and tools? Why are we doing this? Obviously, user experience is important. You might know SAP for a couple of years, and you might know the classical transactions we have at SAP with lots of functionality in it, functionality-driven, technology-driven, and not really a good user experience in some cases. So that's the history of SAP. But also the expectations towards user experience, they are changing. I don't have to tell you about what happened in recent years with smartphones, with mobile devices you're using in your private life, with social media and so on. So you do have some expectations about user experience, and these expectations would also go towards business applications from SAP, for example. So what can we do? In the past, we were very much technology driven. There were a lot of features. If you have one classical transactions, there's a lot of features, large menus in it, and it was not really personalized for a specific persona, for a specific role. But if we start developing applications with a person in mind, then something really different can come out. A personalized application, which is just for a specific business task and not just a container of all the technical functionality. So this is one of the major guidelines, principles of SAP Fiori. But what is a SAP Fiori? So SAP Fiori is the design system we have at SAP. And we're going to have a look at that in a second. But if the term Fiori is used, sometimes it's also the user experience provided by SAP products. So if you're looking, for example, at SAP S/4HANA, the applications follow the Fiori design system. So it's the Fiori applications, the business applications. Or the term is also used in connection with the development tools, with, for example, SAP Business Application, developing Fiori applications. And the technologies, for example, with Fiori Elements or SAP UI5. And we are going to touch all these topics in this session. But strictly speaking, SAP Fiori is a design system. And let's have a quick look here. We have a URL here with the with the Fiori design guidelines, right? You see the web page, you see that there are Fiori design guidelines for web, for iOS, and for Android. And let's have a quick look, for example, in the web version here. So there's a lot of explanation about what is Fiori, about the design aspects, the visual design, the colors, for example, the fonts, and so on. And then also looking at more concrete UI elements. For example, let's pick a simple one. Let's look at the button, right? The button is here in the action section. And you can see here, this is the definition of the design of the Fiori button. You see a couple of pictures here. You see different types of buttons here. You see toggle buttons, you see segmented buttons, exactly how they look like. You see a button with a badge. You see how the behavior, all of this is the design defined for a button in this case. And we have the same for all other UI elements, even for complex tables and so on. And then at the end of the page, we all have also links towards an implementation. So if we want to implement such a button, we can click here, for example, on this link for samples to implement the button with SAP UI5. I mean, this is now also jumping ahead with what we cover in the presentation. Just to show you, I just clicked on this link here. You see samples for the button. This is the SAP UI5 demo kit, explaining how to implement things with SAP UI5. For example, if we need a button with a badge, we can look at this example here, and you can see this is a test page. There's a button here, and I can change the badge, the little red number. I can change the type to emphasize button, it's becoming blue. And I can have a look at, if I use this button up here, look at the coding, how to implement this. So we have a nice connection of the design specification and how to implement this. Just to give you a quick impression. So SAP Fiori is a design system, and it links closely to the tools and the technologies we have for implementing and running Fiori applications. And Fiori has a history. We started 10 years ago with Fiori, started with simple scenarios, and this went towards more complex scenarios, business scenarios with more functionality. And this is going on. So it's an evolution of Fiori. The design will evolve further. The technologies and products will evolve. So this is a continuous evolution. And you see the latest aspects here from last year, this year, for example, consistency, intelligence, integration, collaboration. And one aspect, and I'm going to mention this a couple of times, is consistency. How can we provide consistency in user experience? This is an important aspect. How can, for example, tools and technologies support the development and the usage of a consistent user experience? One of the latest evolutions in Fiori was the Horizon design. So this is the Horizon theme, I should say. So this is a theme being used by Fiori applications. Theme means it defines the visual appearance. It's CSS defining the colors, for example, and the visual design of the applications. And you see it comes as a morning horizon and as an evening horizon, a light and a dark version. And there's also, for accessibility reasons, there's also high contrast white and black versions of the Horizon theme. And this is one example of the consistency. Consistency means having the same things, aspects in many places. So they are the same. And how do we do this? We're implementing it once and using it everywhere. This is a very stupid, simple principle, right? We're not defining, implementing the colors in each application. It does not make sense. We want to achieve consistency. So we define it once, we implement it once, and use it in all applications. And that's basically the simple principle of, well, standard software. SAP is famous for introducing standard software to business software, right? Many years ago. Or you can call it reuse of functionality. However you call this, it's a very simple principle. And we're doing this, for example, with the Horizon theme, because the Horizon theme is used also in not only in S/4HANA, but also in SuccessFactors, for example, or used in SAP Concur. So in various SAP products, the same theme. And by implementing the theme in different UI technologies, so we are going to cover UI5 in a minute, and there's also the classical UI technologies, as you can see here, SAP GUI for HTML and WebDimpro for ABAP. They have also the Horizon theme, and that means no matter how the application is implemented, they all show up in a consistent theme by reusing the same CSS, the same style definitions in various applications and even various technologies and even various SAP solutions or even beyond SAP solutions. So it's the simple idea of reuse. Just showing you at the end of each section here, I have a link, a slide with a couple of links here with further information. So I have hidden these in my PowerPoint presentation here, but once you look at the PDF version after the session, as Tanya mentioned, you can have access to more information. Just as an example, so there's more in the slide deck you get than what I can show you here in this time. So that was the theme in Fiori, but there's more. It's not just the theme, the design, the colors, let's say, but it's also how things actually work. For example, if you have various solutions, you see on the left a couple of entry screens of SAP solutions. The SAP solutions, some of them are acquired, some of them are, how this is called, historically grown is a term you use for that. So they look different, they have a different experience. And we want to strive for consistency. It's again, always the same word I'm going to use today. Consistency. On the right, you see an entry screen we want to achieve for many products. You see at the bottom left down here, the classical tiles of a Fiori launchpad to launch individual applications. So similar to your smartphone home screen, launching applications, but there's also other elements here. There's analytical cards here, list cards, and so on. So if we can reuse these elements in different technologies, in different products, in different solutions of SAP, we can achieve a consistency. So this is a major task for the tools and technologies to provide these things, but to provide it in a way that it can be used in different scenarios. And that's the main aspect. So it's not just provide some means to bring up, let's say, this analytical card here, but to do this in a way that it can be used in different technologies, for example, because the status quo is that there's different technologies being used. So, and this is now also at the end of each section, I have a slide here with Marvin. Marvin is a character of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Marvin is also called the paranoid android. And the reason is that Marvin actually has a brain the size of a planet. So he's super smart, but he's paranoid and depressed and very sad because the only tasks he gets are very, very simple tasks, like making a cup of tea or opening a door. So he's not really happy because he's so intelligent, too intelligent for just these simple tasks. But still, I used Marvin here to point you to starting points. I mean, if you Google the Fiori design system, there's tons of information. If you look at the various SAP sources in SAP community and so on, there's tons of information. And this is just my recommendation of entry points or the most important links, which I would suggest if you want to start your journey to look into this. These are good starting points, in my opinion. But there, again, there's more links in the PDF version of the slides you'll get afterwards. So thanks, Marvin, for highlighting this. Now let's get an overview of this session. You see here, there's a disclaimer, teaching concept. So the slide I'm building up now is not an official slide. It's not correct. I have to say, it has errors, but still I think it's helpful to show you how the things connect, right? So keep in mind, it's not complete, it's not correct, but I hope that it's helpful. So what are tasks to be done in this context? We need to develop applications. We at SAP, you as a partner or you as a customer, maybe extend a standard application. That's one task. Or adapt an application. If you reuse an application, you might want to do some changes. Reuse SAP standard, but do some custom extensions to it. And at the end, run the applications. Let the business users use that. Who is doing these tasks? Developers, obviously. Then we see a role of key users. A key user is someone, you can call it a business expert. There are many terms for this, but it's someone who has a certain technical understanding, but is not a developer. It's not working in code, but has a certain technical understanding to, for example, adapt standard screens, to do customizing, things like that. Right? Customizing is a term used in the ABAP world. And we have the business user. And recently we introduced low-code, no-code tools, and we're going to cover that as well. So we also have a term of citizen developer. So that's also someone who has business knowledge and is using low-code, no-code tools to create simple applications. We have the different UI technologies. We have native mobile technologies. We have web technologies, and we're going to cover that. And most of the times, this is connecting to some backend. I only picked here ABAP-based backend, on-prem backend, S/4HANA Cloud. So we're not looking at this in this session here. There's many more options, BTP, for example. I just left this here out for simplicity. And now, what products do we have here? And these boxes building up here is actually my sections in my presentations. So we are having a work zone covering launchpad functionality to launch applications. That's something a business user is doing. We're having development activities in business application, for example, or in build apps to create applications, also to create mobile applications. We're going to look at these boxes. We also have local development tools. So if you're working locally, not on Business Technology Platform, but on your local laptop, we have tools to use to build Fiori or any ABAP developments. And we have tools here to adapt the screen. Depending on the technology, we have two different tools, and we're going to look at this to take a standard SAP app and change that. This is a classical scenario. If you have an ABAP background, you might be familiar with bodies, for example, where SAP has put in predefined extension points you as a partner or customer can use to add your custom coding, your custom functionality. Same scenario here in this yellow box to adapt standard screens. And we have mobile technologies, native mobile technologies, and we're going to touch that as well. So let's start and first have a look at how a business user can access applications. This is the SAP Work Zone product. Let me show you the details here. So the vision, the task of this product is to increase user productivity for the business user, obviously, by providing applications. So just like with your smartphone, you launch an individual app, business app, processes, right, to work, for example, with process automation, And information. Information is very general. It would also cover here, for example, portal-like informations, video, pictures, collaboration, and things like that. So unstructured data. So this is what we need to provide to an end user. And we need to provide this to an end user from different systems, maybe. If you just have a single system, let's say a single S/4HANA on-prem system, then the task is easy. You need to launch the apps in that system. But maybe if you have a system landscape, if you have different systems, if you have a hybrid landscape with cloud and on-prem, and you have Concur and other SuccessFactors, other systems, you might have the requirement to have a single entry point, right? Not many different systems, but a single entry point, and especially important if your business scenarios goes across different solutions. So integration is one aspect. And again, consistency, right? Because those different solutions might be based on different technologies, and we want to have a consistent experience, a consistent entry point. So these are the most important aspects of the entry point. And what do we have? If we look from bottom to top here, at the bottom here, we have individual apps. So if we have a specific app, we could provide this via URL. The business user puts a URL in the browser bookmarks and can launch the application. Okay, that's possible, but most cases, this is not sufficient. It's many applications. It's role-based access. It's navigation from one app to another. So we need a bit more. So we go further up in this picture here. There's, for example, overview pages, as you can see here. So these are pages giving you an entry point, for example, with analytics to a number of apps. We have that for a couple of scenarios. And then even a bit higher, we have the full solutions, for example, SAP S/4HANA or SuccessFactors, right? And those solutions, they should have, or they actually have, a homepage. You can use this single product. Of course, it comes with an out-of-the-box homepage you can use to launch the applications of this product, of S/4HANA Cloud, or of SuccessFactors, and so on. This is a single system scenario, and you can use the single system without any further solution, right? But if you have many systems, you might want to have an entry point for all of them, right? So if that is a requirement, we are going further up and have a cross-system entry point. And we're going to look at that. Cross-system means, where is cross-system? Cross-system, obviously, nowadays is in cloud, because cloud is the point for integration. Cloud can connect different systems. So the place to implement such a cross-system entry point is the cloud. And this is actually where we provide the SAP Start and SAP Build Workzone products. And let us have a quick look. So the SAP Start product is, as you can see here, a pre-configured homepage for cloud solutions. So it's not one system. This says for cloud solutions. So if you have many cloud solutions, the SAP Start is a pre-configured entry point, a single entry point for all these cloud solutions. Next step in an evolution, if you want more, we offer the SAP Build Workzone Standard Edition. Standard Edition is essential entry point for cloud and on-premise, and it offers you lots of functionality to define your entry pages. This is basically the new product name for what you might be familiar with as the Fiori launchpad, or more specific, the BTP launchpad service. So this is the number 2 here, is the classic launch page we have for many years, of course, with more functionality. And if this is not enough, the launching applications from this launch page is the SAP Build Workzone Advanced Edition. This is based on GEM, is collaboration, has collaboration features, has unstructured data, has videos, graphics, web content, as you can see here, and many integration capabilities. So this is an evolution. For example, if you can start with the SAP Start, currently available as beta, and then go to Build Workzone Standard Edition and to Advanced Edition, depending on what you need. And they are all based on the same technology, for example, to connect the different systems. And they are all based on the Horizon theme, again, to have a consistent experience, right? So these are the products we have for launching applications business users can use to launch applications. And to have this in a different way of presenting this, just to show you the individual product homepage I mentioned earlier, this is just for the system itself. SAP Start can connect several systems, cloud systems specifically, and the Build Workzone Standard Edition can connect cloud and on-prem. And the Build Workzone Advanced Edition can connect cloud and on-prem and has functionality for unstructured content and collaboration. So these are the offerings out of the box homepage or integration aspects as much as you need. So this is the SAP Build Workzone product offering. So here two links, a video to see this in action, and also to understand the Fiori deployment options for your different landscapes when you have such a landscape. So let's continue. So this was the entry point. We need a technology to implement this, to implement the technology, the applications and entry point. And this is SAP UI5. SAP UI5 is an HTML framework, so it's running in the browser on many platforms and for enterprise-grade applications. And this is an important aspect. There are other UI technologies, web UI technologies, for example, Angular, React, and others. They have different capabilities. They probably have no focus, such a focus as SAP UI5 has on enterprise capabilities. You see a list of some values of SAP UI5. Providing a consistent user experience. Yes, I mentioned that already a couple of times. You can use that SAP UI5 in different browsers. All the common browsers are supported, different operating systems, and on different devices, on browsers on your mobile, tablet, or desktop device. There's hundreds of enterprise UI elements, so complex ones also to build SAP functionality, right? With trees and tables and filtering and lots of stuff we need at SAP. There's extension options. This is also something which is typical for SAP or standard functionality, that you're able to extend SAP standard functionality. The tools for developers to build applications in a pro-code or low-code ways. And a separation of apps and frameworks, so we can innovate in the UI5 framework, for example, adding new design horizon themes, for example, centrally in the framework, keeping your application untouched, SAP's application, your application, right? So we have framework and application nicely separated, so they can have their own life cycle, can have their own innovation speed, as if you want to call it like that. And SAP UI5 applications are running in the browser. I mentioned that, covering all the different platforms, operating system, and devices. So later we're going to touch also native mobile technologies. Those are specifically for a mobile device, right? For example, iOS or Android. Here with the SAP UI5, the idea is the app is developed once, by SAP or by you, and you can use it in all browsers, no matter on which device. So depending on your scenario, you can pick the suitable technology. And there's also more. This is what we call web components. Why do we need more? SAP UI5 is available, for example, in S/4HANA, in Business Technology Platform. Why do we need something else? If you have a system with SAP UI5, you can use the SAP UI5 programming model to implement your application. You have all the functionality you need. But if there is an application which is built on different technologies, for example, Angular or React, an acquired SAP solution, a non-SAP solution, for whatever reason, you might not want to re-implement this with SAP UI5, but keep your Angular React implementation, but still want to have the consistent Fiori user experience. And that's where the web components come into the game. Web components is a standard in browsers where you can basically define, let's say, a custom HTML tag, which brings up some visual element. This is pure, what you see on the left, this is pure HTML. No SAP context, nothing. Pure HTML would bring up a pure screen. There's no SAP design, no Fiori design, no horizon. Okay, now we want to have the Fiori qualities, the UI5 qualities I mentioned earlier, for example, the horizon design. So we are using the standard of web components and define the UI5 web components. So the same thing here, but instead of the plain HTML tags, we're using the UI5 web components. And the result is this. This looks like Fiori. It's the horizon design. It has UI5 qualities, for example, security. You cannot paste malicious JavaScript coding into an input field. It's accessible. You can use it with a keyboard. You can translate it into different languages and all these SAP qualities, right? And now the interesting thing is, this is pure HTML. There's no SAP stack architecture of Fiori, no OData, no ABAP, nothing. This is pure HTML. So you can use this on top of other frameworks, for example, Angular, React. So stay with this implementation, but on top use the UI5 web components to come up with a consistent Fiori user experience. So this is relevant for other technology stacks. As long as you are working, for example, on ECC or S/4HANA, you have SAP UI5 and you're good. This is for other technologies. And again, to provide a consistent experience on as many platforms as possible. And just to show off a couple of numbers here, the adoption of SAP UI5 or web components in SAP products. So this is a growing number of SAP solutions, applications using UI5. Why are they using UI5? Because they automatically get all the qualities I mentioned earlier. They automatically get the horizon design, right? Automatically, because it's reused, centrally implemented. And this is one more thing. It's a bit like the web components. It's the card. Remember, I showed you this entry screen with cards, with analytical cards, list cards, and so on. And they are implemented also in SAP UI5, but in a way that they are generated from a very simple JSON file. And again, no Fiori architecture, no SAP backend is required. You just need to come up with a very simple JSON configuration to render the card. So again, same reasoning. You can use these cards in different products, in SAP Workzone, in different products, because everyone can just generate some simple JSON configuration file, right? So again, you have a consistent experience also with these cards on entry pages. And entry point to SAP UI5, let me quickly show you the SAP UI5 demo kit here. This is ui5.sap.com, where you have all the documentation on SAP UI5. For example, the essentials on the different concepts. Let me make this a bit bigger here so you can see the different concepts of SAP, of SAP UI5, how you structure your application. And there's also tutorials here. There's a quick start tutorial. This is a bit of a hello world tutorial. And we also have what we call walkthrough. This is a 30-something step tutorial for all the different concepts and things to learn with SAP UI5. Very good. So now let's have a quick look at Fiori elements. We just talked about SAP UI5. If you develop one application, one Fiori application with SAP UI5, you're fine. You have a certain amount of coding, which is your coding or our coding at SAP, and you own that coding. You might need to debug this coding. You might need to maintain this coding. You might need to extend this coding with new requirements and so on. This is the natural situation. Now, if you develop a second Fiori app, you have more coding you need to maintain. If you develop a fifth or a 10th, some of you had developed 30 Fiori applications. So you might come across an effect that you say, okay, I have developed this before. I want to have this in a central place. I want to reuse this. Or even I want to reuse functionality, which I need again and again and again. I want to reuse this from SAP, not implement this again and again on my own. And the solution for that is SAP Fiori Elements. If you follow the standard patterns of Fiori Elements, in this case here, it's a list report and object page, right? You see a list of business objects. And once you select an object, you see a detailed screen here with more details. This is a very common scenario. And then what you typically have is that you have a search, you have filter, you have the option to create new entries. You have an export to Excel of this table. You can personalize this. You can sort this. You page and a number of functionality. And all of this in an accessible way, in a translatable way, in a performant way, and so on and so on. And you want to reuse this again and again. And it should be in the responsibility of SAP, right? To always maintain this in the best possible way, because you don't want to implement this. And that is exactly the Fiori Elements approach. So at the end, we need an SAP UI5 view. That's what you see here at the bottom. This is what we need at the end. But with Fiori Elements, this is not explicitly implemented in a code editor, but it's generated. It's generated. Now watch this crazy animation here. It's generated at runtime, meaning it's generated from the Fiori Elements patterns you see here on the left. This is, for example, the list report, object page, these standard patterns I showed you before, and they are provided by SAP. And what is also needed, of course, your business data and a definition of where is your data displayed on the screen, and can this entity be edited or is it read-only, and a couple of other things. And this is provided by the application developer, for example, you, in the format of annotations in as a metadata here. So instead of developing the explicit SAP UI5 coding, you generate this from the SAP patterns and some metadata you're defining. So these are the two approaches, freestyle UI5 on the left and Fiori Elements on the right. So with SAP UI5, you are very flexible here, because it's your own coding. You can do whatever, implement whatever design you need. Or follow the Fiori elements approach. Then you are very efficient, you're reusing a lot, you're following the standard patterns, and you're very efficient with developing applications. What do you need to know to do this? To develop SAP UI5, you need to have web development skills. You need to know about SAP UI5, obviously. You need to know about JavaScript, for example. On the other hand, if you develop Fiori Elements application, you need to understand the annotations, right? This is the metadata controlling what's happening, what's being generated with Fiori Elements. So the Fiori Elements approach is what we recommend because we think that the total cost of development is lower with Fiori Elements. There's more you get from the framework, right, as I explained. But there's also less flexibility. Yeah? But the Fiori Elements approach is definitely what is recommended within SAP or for you as a partner or customer to have the most, to benefit most from what SAP has. And this now looks as if it's an either-or decision. It's not really an either-or decision because we just recently introduced or not recently, it was last year, the flexible programming model. And this means basically to go somewhere in between. You have the two extremes, the Fiori Elements, pattern-based on the left here, and the UI5 freestyle, where you explicitly code UI5 freestyle. But with the flexible programming model, you can also go in between. For example, start with the Fiori Elements, patterns, and then extend this and add some freestyle coding where you need this. In some area of the screen, you might need to add your custom whatever, and then you can do that. Or you start from the other end. You start from the freestyle end because your whole page needs to be freestyle SAP UI5 because you have your own requirements. But maybe in some area of the screen, you want to reuse a table and a filter bar with the filter, with the export to Excel and the value helps and everything. You want to have this out of the box. So this is then the scenario where you can reuse a building block, what we call it. So the building block is like the smart element which is driven by the annotations. And just to show you how you can look at this, this is the Flexible Programming Model Explorer. So you have some explanations. For example, if you start with Fiori Elements, create a new application with Fiori Elements, you have extension points. You can add custom sections, custom actions, and so on. We have this for quite a while. You can also add controller extensions. So the behavior, right? If you not only need some visual element on the screen, but also some action, so you can add your custom coding here. This is when you start with Fiori Elements. And what is fairly new is when you start with freestyle, and then you can add smart building blocks, which are driven by the annotations. And then you can see here, there's an explanation. You have a freestyle page. There's some error coming up here. Okay, so this page is not working at the moment. So we're going to fix this, but the building blocks, you see some examples then here on how to do this. So the main message is here, you have the two extremes, Fiori Elements and freestyle, but you can also go between to reuse as much as possible from SAP and have your custom coding as much as you need it. And to put the technologies I mentioned into context, so I mentioned the UI5 web components. These are individual UI elements, like a button and a table and so on. And you use them on top of other programming models like Angular or React. If you want to have the programming model as well from UI5, then SAP UI5 is the right choice. That's the classic choice for example, ECC or S/4HANA. And if you on top want to have an efficient development with UI5 by reusing lots of stuff from SAP, then the SAP Fiori Elements is a good approach, which also creates an SAP UI5 view. And again, a couple of two links here. One is the flexible programming model explorer I showed you earlier. So I'm very good as the perfect timing here. So we are ready for a break. So now it's up to you. So you can either have your cup of coffee or you can work, have an exercise. The exercise is linked below the video. So in YouTube, if you open the text below the video, a bit further down is a link to the exercise document, right? And the exercise document, just to show you what should open up if you click on that link, is this Word document explaining how to adapt a standard application as a key user. So the full scenario is we're going to cover in the second part of the after the break, just to show you where this belongs. This is the red box here. The scenario is that there's a standard application from SAP and a key user wants to change this application for the end users, right? And just showing you the first steps. Again, this is an optional exercise. Of course, you can have a 10-minute coffee break or do this exercise. I'm just showing you the first step. It starts in your browser, obviously, with ui5.sap.com. And there's a section here on demo apps. And if you scroll down, there's a section here on flexibility demo apps. And here a link to key user adaptation. And here's also another link of key user adaptation. So this is the entry point. The details are in the Word document provided below the video here. And the entry point is ui5.sap.com, as it says in the document. And then you click on Demo Apps and go to the Demo Apps here. Right? So my suggestion is that we have 10 minutes break here, and we're going to continue with the presentation in 10 minutes, depending on your time zone. Have a break or check the exercise document we link below the video.
I have also added the link in the chat for those who did not have time to download the exercise. And in the meantime, for everyone else who does not want to do the exercise, perhaps you would like to have a look at the links that we provided at the very beginning of the chat. They are also in the description of today's video. If you want to either scroll up in the chat or have a look at the description for further information on the various technologies.
I see that there are a few questions in the chat. Maybe I can use this time to answer the questions. So the first one is from Juan Pablo asking whether it is possible and sustainable to create a custom theme. Yes, it is. There's one tool which I haven't mentioned for simplicity reasons. It's the UI theme designer. So there's a tool to take an SAP standard theme, for example, Horizon, and change that, add your own color scheme, for example, your own company logo, and so on. And that is obviously a tool and a technology we support from SAP. So the answer is yes. There's also a question from Marcus. How much effort is it to learn the annotations development? Any experience? Well, if you are a pro JavaScript developer, and you know that, and you might even know SAP UI5, then this is, of course, one argument towards using explicit UI5 or freestyle coding. But there are two things I want to mention. One is the Fiori Elements approach is the recommended approach from SAP. And we're using this within SAP, and we are recommending this to our partners and customers. And there's a lot of investments in that area because we think it's the most efficient way to develop applications and to develop applications which are future-proof, because we can more easily put innovations in the future into the central framework. So this is one reason why an investment looking into Fiori Elements approach is worth it. And also, there's a number of tools, a growing number of tools, and we're covering that after the break, to help you to develop, to create the annotations, right? Code-based tools or even low-code, no-code visual tools helping you with the annotations. So these are the two arguments I can answer to that. And there's one question from Massimo asking, why does Business Application Studio, Visual Studio Code don't have visual annotation modeler like old WebID? That's something we're covering after the break, the development environments. And the Business Application Studio has actually more support for development applications. The annotation modeler in WebID was a bit of a technical tool. It has this huge hierarchy. You need to expand all the nodes and so on. It was not very convenient to use, and we have more support in Business Application Studio. And I'll mention that in a second. So I think 10 minutes are over. Tanya, should we continue? Okay.
Yes.
So great. So welcome back. Let's continue. Can you just let me know in the chat, in the YouTube chat, which development environments have you used? SE80 with ABAP, Eclipse, Web IDE, VS Code, Business Application Studio. Can you just put in the chat in YouTube which IDEs have you used? Just one of them? Many? Which development environments have you used? Just put it in the chat. So Carlos is very up to date, VS Code or BAS. We see Web IDE from Chris. So Chris, we're going to touch Application Studio, which is the next generation Web IDE. And all of them. Okay, so there's a lot of experience here. Marianne has a lot of experience. Yes, VS Code, BAS, all. Okay, so I'm sure you have an opinion on different development environments. Now, just as a second question, let me know if you're using your development environment. Are you looking at what I call more guidance here, meaning you want to have visual editors, WYSIWYG editors, drag and drop, wizards, templates, or even low-code, no-code tools? Or are you more a pro type, a code-based type, and you want to have the full flexibility with command line, seeing the pure code and being able to edit this? Can you put in the chat, are you looking for more guidance or more flexibility? Just put in the chat, are you looking for more guidance in your development environment or more flexibility, more code? It depends. So Niels wants to have more flexibility, command line interface, and I see a loving heart. Guidance, flexibility. So there's different opinions here. Okay, thank you. I mean, I see Marianne put in, it depends. I think this is the interesting part, right? You might want to use actually both, right? Wherever it helps. So more the low-code, no-code tools, the templates and so on, if that helps you as a developer to be more efficient, if you can leverage these things. But then you might need an extra flexibility because you want to add your specific logic, and then you might need to add coding. So it's probably, as Marianne put, it depends, a mixture of both. It's a bit like the Fiori elements and freestyle approach, right? You want to leverage as much as possible to be very efficient, but then have flexibility to add your custom logic if needed. So let's go back to our screen here and let's look at the development environments. for pro code, low code, and no code here for all types of development. The development is happening on BTP in cloud. Similar to the access point, we're developing for a number of systems in some central point, which is obviously the cloud. So just like the SAP Web IDE, also the Business Application Studio we're covering in a minute is running on Business Technology Platform in cloud. But you can actually use the applications you develop there on the different platforms, on your on-prem, ECC, S4HANA, S4HANA Cloud, and so on in all the different systems. Development is happening on BTP, for at least for the non-ABAP, I should say. We'll come to that later on BTP, but the actual usage of the application can be in any on-prem cloud system. So just highlighted here capabilities of BTP. There's a lot more, obviously, but here we are looking at the application development capabilities in a unified environment, which is, as usual, optimized for SAP applications. And here, I mentioned it a couple of times, and some of you know this, the SAP Business Application Studio is the strategic environment for the development of business applications. I should say here, for all scenarios which are not ABAP. We're touching ABAP in a second. So for all scenarios which are not ABAP, for example, Fiori UI, for example, mobile, for example, cloud full stack, the Business Application Studio is the IDE, the strategic IDE. And if we look at Business Application Studio, maybe I can just open this and to see this in real life here. There's a selection of a dev space, right? So this is a bit the space where your coding is stored, and also where the setup of the IDE and the different tools are. So when you use the application studio for the first time, you would create a new dev space. Let me make this a bit bigger so you can see. You would create a new dev space. And when you do that, you give it a name here, but you also select a type. And that defines the number of tools you get. If you know Eclipse, it's a bit like the perspectives in Eclipse. You just get a subset of all tools. In principle, you could ignore this and imagine Application Studio having all tools, all available tools for all scenarios. But this is a bit too much and not very user-friendly. So with this selection here, whether you want to develop a Fiori UI, or a full stack application with productivity tools, or a mobile application, you get a specific set of tools. Yeah. So we can pick that. And I already created here a Fiori dev space. And this is, can open this to actually see then the tools. Might take a moment to launch. Here we go. So you can see on the left is already my file explorer, where you can see a number of folders and files. And you can, of course, look at the individual files and work in coding. Or have the get started screen, for example, to start your development from a template. Imagine you want to create a new application, so you can start from a template. So you're not starting from an empty editor, but have start from a running Fiori application. And then there's a number of templates you can pick. Pick Fiori application here. And then continue. For example, here's the list report and object page pattern I showed you earlier, the Fiori elements pattern, or the SAP UI5 freestyle. So these would be starting points, and then you would connect it to some data service from your backend, and you would have at the end of this wizard have a running Fiori application, and then you can continue your developments with the respective tools. So these are the different scenarios supported by a business application studio. And what we call Fiori tools is the tools within Business Application Studio to help you developing Fiori applications. What I just showed you is the application generator to pick a template and generate the initial application. Then there's visual tools to show you the structure of the different views of the applications. There's guided development, giving you little snippets of documentation to put in, also snippets of coding into your application. There's a preview, there's code completion, there's a service modeler, and there's also tools here to work with the annotations, as I mentioned earlier. And these tools, the SAP Fiori tools, that's interesting, and I think it's relevant to some of you. They are available in Business Application Studio and in Visual Studio Code. So this is the general approach we have to develop these tools once. And then you have the option whether you use it on cloud in Business Application Studio or in the local Visual Studio Code. And we'll touch that also a bit later. There are few exceptions where tools are not or not yet available in Visual Studio Code. For example, the adaptation projects we're covering a bit later are not yet in Visual Studio Code, but it's on the roadmap. And the layout editor is also something which is in in Business Application Studio only. But in general, this is the approach we are following, so that you have an option of using a pre-configured IDE on cloud. So you can launch it as I did in my just beforehand in the browser, you launch your IDE. Or if you're a person who wants to have full control of the IDE, your local installation of Visual Studio Code, then you have that option as well. And there's a number of tools here. And what you see here is the what we call productivity tools. And that is actually tools. I mean, we have that for a while. We even have that in Web IDE, right? Visual tools. We have templates, we have wizards or drag and drop tools. But here we took it a step further, what we call the productivity tools in Business Application Studio. And let me just quickly show you how that looks like. This is an entry point here where you have a list of your projects. And let me just launch the Business Application Studio for an existing project. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is the home page, right? So no file explorer here, no folders and files, but this is an overview of the development artifacts. And this scenario here is for full stack cloud applications. So we're talking of database and UI for cloud applications, specifically using the cloud application programming model. So what would you need for that? You would need some data model. I'm not going into the detail, but you can imagine you're defining your data model with entities, with properties. A customer has a first name, last name, street, phone number, etc. And then if you have a data model, you can expose the data model as a service, as a OData service. You define that. If you don't have a backend service with data, you can add some sample data here. So just like in the good old Web IDE, like in an Excel sheet, you add a couple of data sets. And then once you have that, you can build on top, build a user interface. And that is an SAP UI5 user interface, obviously. And in this case, it's based on annotations. It's a Fiori elements based application. And then you can also here connect it to external data models and define user roles. But the interesting thing is all these are visual tools. We don't have enough time, unfortunately, to go into the detail. It's all visual tools, and you can come up with a full Fiori elements applications with a data model and data without seeing any line of code. Right? So this is an approach, we call it productivity tool, here to be more productive, more efficient, developing the applications. But as we said earlier, should you need to go to coding, you can, because what is happening here with all the editors which are behind these boxes here, what is behind is the actual normal coding, the UI5, or in this case, Fiori elements coding, the CDS data models, and so on. And you can look at that coding. You can open the file explorer here and see the respective coding. Right here, you see, for example, this is the Fiori elements application, and you can see the individual files here and edit the files and do the changes as needed. Or use the visual editor, right? So you can use the more guidance tools as long as they help you, and then go behind the scenes and look at the coding if needed, if you want to have more flexibility and do the code base changes. And I think this is a good mixture. Okay, and again, a couple of recommendations. There's a number of tools to learn about Business Application Studio. Here's Marvin's recommendation. So there's a tutorial, really step-by-step tutorial to learn about Business Application Studio, a simple UI5 application. Learning about Fiori tools, Fiori elements with a list report and object page. There's a tutorial. There's a tutorial on the flexible programming model I mentioned earlier. There's one on the productivity tools I just showed you. There's also a very new learning journey on the BAS productivity tools, and a very new video. Tanya, I think this was from this week, if I remember correctly, this week here, a session in Tanya's series on the cloud native app development. So that is something I can recommend, or actually Marvin recommends this, but there's much more, as you can see here with the links, tutorials on this. So this is a good entry point to learn about Business Application Studio.
I was just about to share the link of Tuesday's webcast in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thanks, Tanya. Okay, so these were tools in Business Application Studio. So this is the tool targeting a pro developer. I assume many of you are pro developers, but there's also a different type of persona we call citizen developer. Right? This is a developer who has business knowledge, has some technical understanding, and might want to create simple business applications, but without dealing with coding, without pro-code knowledge. Right? This is the low-code, no-code approach, which is a fairly important topic in recent months. And you've probably heard announcements of SAP on that at the last TechEd and so on. So this is about enabling a citizen developer, not a pro developer, to create simple apps. Now, there are many opinions on that, and you can say, this is a scenario we have. We can enable many people to create their own apps without involving IT and so on. Or there's opinions who say, this is a marketing hype. It's not living up to the expectations. This is not happening in reality. There's many opinions, and I just don't want to start this discussion. But the important thing, I think, is these are valuable tools, either enabling a citizen developer to create those apps or helping a pro developer to be more efficient, to develop such standard small applications in a very efficient way. So how you call this person might be a different task, but I think these are valuable tools. And this is some continuum here. You can see here from pro code, low code to no code. And the SAP Build Apps tool I'll mention now is targeting the no code approach here. Whereas with Business Application Studio, we have, of course, the professional experience you know, or you might know from, for example, Web IDE, but also the more low-code approach I showed you with the productivity tools. So based on the same technology behind the scenes, you can use both approaches or build apps for the no-code approach. And Build Apps is part of a suite of products, which is under the product name SAP Build. So there's Build Apps on the left to let citizen developer build applications. There's functionality for process automation. I think I mentioned that at the very beginning. And also functionality to design business signs. And this is the Build Work Zone product I mentioned when we talked about the entry points, right? So these are three areas, three aspects of the SAP Build product, which was launched at the last TechEd end of last year. And the Build Apps, this is the former AppGyver product SAP acquired, is the low-code, no-code solution for native developers. And there's a lot of material, tutorials here, where you can see how to develop applications in a simple way. You can develop UI in a drag and drop fashion, and you see that on the screen here. You can develop backend with Visual Cloud Functions, define data models, define flows where you navigate, define actions and behavior, and so on. And there's a growing number of options to integrate that into your SAP landscape and so on. For example, for now, I don't know, think 2 weeks or so, you can also connect this to on-prem data sources, not only cloud data sources like your S/4HANA cloud system, but also your on-prem ABAP systems to provide data for these applications. And there's more integration happening in the SAP ecosystem, I would say. So there's a dedicated roadmap on Build Apps where you can learn about that. Okay, now let's have a quick look at mobile. For native mobile, so now we're not talking about web development, but native mobile, if you want to have a dedicated native mobile experience on your phone, for example, with offline capabilities, which is super fast, then a native UI technology for iOS and Android might be the right options. And I put here links. There are specific design guidelines I showed you at the very beginning. There's adaptations of that for Android and for iOS to make it fit to the standard designs of those devices. And there's software development kits to actually develop this. For example, there's an SDK for Android helping you to enable the apps and helping you to access specific APIs for the communication, for security, to make the app then a secure part of the SAP ecosystem, for example. But it's development in the native Android Studio IDE and technology. And we have the same for iOS. So Swift-based development also for let's say, freestyle development of your native mobile application. And I mentioned freestyle because there's also a way which is not freestyle, but rather model-based or metadata-driven, just like the Fiori Elements approach I explained earlier. So that with the SAP Mobile Services Mobile Development Kit, MDK, this is a tool available also in Application Studio. And with visual tools, you can see here at the bottom left, you can create a model of your application. This is the metadata. And then from this model, generate a native application. From this model, you can generate an iOS application, an Android application, or even web application, by the way, which is implemented with the UI5 web components I showed you earlier. So you create the model and generate mobile applications, native mobile applications from that. So it's also an efficient way of creating simple mobile applications, just like Fiori Elements. Okay, back to our overview picture. So let's have a look at the local IDEs. So far, we talked about Business Application Studio on BTP, but I also mentioned the Visual Studio Code, which is your local IDE on your laptop. And that works nicely with Business Application Studio because Business Application Studio is based on Visual Studio Code. But Business Application Studio is the managed environment hosted on cloud, and you can use that out of the box. Visual Studio Code is if you want to have full control on your local laptop. But for example, the Fiori tools would run in both. One thing which is on the roadmap for the Business Application Studio is also a mixture, a local edition. What is available for a few weeks now is that you can have a local Visual Studio Code connecting to a workspace on BTP. So that's kind of a mixture, local front end and workspace on BTP. And we have a fully local version also on the roadmap, but this will take a bit more time. And for ABAP development, I didn't talk a lot about ABAP development. That is the same approach we have for quite a while. So the IDE for ABAP development, the strategic IDE is the ABAP development tools in Eclipse. So that is also running on your local environment. So if it's about ABAP development, it's happening in the ABAP development tools in Eclipse. And all other developments are in Business Application Studio on BTP. Okay, and if you want to install those, making your first steps, Marvin provides the links to set up the Fiori tools in Visual Studio Code or install the ABAP development tools. Okay, back to our overview. Now it's about adaptation. The scenario is you're not developing your own app, but first you want to check whether you can use a standard SAP app and, if necessary, make some changes, make some extensions or adaptations to it. You typically don't want to copy the standard SAP application. You don't want to modify it, but you want to add some extensions in a clever way so that they still nicely work with the standard application. So there's two technologies for that here. One is SAP UI5 Flexibility and one is SAP Screen Personas. First, you need to check what's the standard application. Maybe you can use the standard application out of the box. So we have the SAP Fiori reference library here, which is a list of all applications, list of all Fiori applications in various technologies. There's the link down here, and you can filter the list. That's many. You can see here, even in that screenshot, there were a lot of Fiori applications, but this has very clever filter functionality. So this is well hidden here in this button, but use that to filter for your system, for your release, for your version here. This is very, very useful. And then when looking at a specific application, you see a lot of information on that. And there's also something, again, well hidden, as information on extensibility of a specific application in this section here. You can learn about what's the technical name of the UI application, for example. You can learn about the backend service. You can learn about the backend data structures of this specific application, which data structures, which custom includes are in the ABAP data structures and so on. So this is very valuable information if you want to extend a standard application. So this is about the standard application. Now, if you want to use this, but you need some adaptations, you check which technology is this. If it's an SAP UI5 app, we're using SAP UI5 flexibility to make changes. If not, it's a classical UI technology, and we have SAP screen personas to adapt this. So we are looking at these two options now. The alternative is, if this does not fit, because there is no standard application which fits your need, then you can still create your custom application with the approaches we discussed earlier. So now let's have a look at those two options down here. SAP UI5 flexibility is functionality in SAP UI5 to do changes, to do these changes to a standard application in an efficient way, to make it upgrade safe, right? Your custom extensions should work even if the standard application beneath is updated, next version and so on. And you want to do changes wherever you need it. In the past, extensions only worked for predefined extension points. If you have an ABAP history, there were those bodies. So SAP put in bodies where an application developer thought maybe a customer or partner would want to extend here in this place. And then you can use that. But if there's no body or no extension point, then it's a challenge. If the extension points are in the wrong place, not enough, or not in a consistent way in the applications, then that's an issue. And here with the SAP UI5 flexibility technology, you can do changes wherever needed. There's no need for a predefined extension point. If they exist, you can use them, but there's no need for a predefined extension points. Just by using SAP UI5, the app has these capabilities. And there's different personas we see to do those changes. The developer, that's the classical scenario, the developer would add some custom coding to a standard application, working in code. Or a key user. That was actually the exercise you might have done in the break. So a key user doing changes via drag and drop, because the key user is not a developer. Let me just quickly show that again. So this is an application here. What's coming up is a managed product application. So this is a standard application. Now, if I'm a key user, a specific authorization making me a key user, I have the option to adapt this UI, because I know my end users, they need a different screen. I want to tailor this standard application to the needs of my end users. And I have, as a key user, have this option to adapt the UI, and I can do this via drag and drop. I don't need to set up an IT project, talk to the developers and do this. I can do this on my own. I can, for example, I know my end users, they need the description. This is very important for them, so I can move this to the top. But my end users, they use a different terminology. They don't call this description. They call this, I don't know, they call this text. So they understand what it is. And my end users, they don't need the rating field. This is too complex for them. I want to simplify the screen so I can remove this field here for my end users. And there's many more options which you can do here. And then you can, as a key user, provide this screen to your end users. On some platforms, we already have functionality to do this role-based and so on. So as a key user, you do changes via drag and drop for many end users. And some recent highlights in the key user adaptation, that's what you have in the exercise. If you want to do this even after the session, you can visualize the changes you did. There's a list, you can filter this to see what you actually changed. And it's highlighted with little blue dots here where you did some changes. And there's a version, a draft concept, a version history about the changes to a specific app. This was the key user functionality, and there's functionality for developers as well. Just let me show you. Where is my application studio here? The developer works in Business Application Studio. Now imagine there's a standard SAP app and the developer wants to extend that, add some custom coding. And this screen is coming up. So what I do is I create a new project, but I want it to be based on a standard application. And that is not a full-own custom application, but an adaptation project. This is similar to the extension projects you might know from Web IDE. It's a project holding your custom extensions only, referring to a standard app. So starting this, for example, for an ABAP system, and your project name might be Custom Manage Products App. And I want it to be based on a standard application I have in my system. This is my backend system. ES5 is my ABAP system. And now I select a standard application here, which I want to extend. And I can continue with the wizard here, finish this, and it's generating a new project here. You can see this is not a full application. It's just the adaptation project. And I can do changes now. And there's the SAP UI5 Visual Editor, which opens my application. Now it's calling to my backend system. Okay, there's some issue here. This, for some reason, okay, it didn't work. It should come up in an editor. It's calling the backend system, launching the standard application, and then you can do some changes to it. And just this is a comparison of the extension projects in Web IDE and the adaptation projects in Business Application Studio. I just showed you. It's the same scenario. With the adaptation projects, you can extend anywhere, not only predefined extension points. And you can extend Fiori Elements applications as well as freestyle applications. And for the classic ERP screens, I mentioned there's SAP screen personas to, for example, hide fields to make the screen a bit simpler, to rearrange the screen, to make changes, to pre-fill fields and so on. So to do changes, keeping the underlying classic screen and putting some for example, simplifications on top. And again, a couple of links here. If you're interested in more details, have a look at these links. Okay, so this is the last aspect here, the entry point for mobile applications. This is SAP Mobile Start. And let me just check if I can show you on my mobile phone. Let me see if I can start this. Just a second. Okay, here we go. So you should see my mobile screen here, and there's SAP Start. So this is the mobile, it's actually SAP Mobile Start. So the start screen for native mobile application. So that's basically the follow-up tool to the Fiori client, right? This is not web-based, but this is native technology. So if I launch this, you can see an entry screen, you can see to-dos here, and I can open individual applications and accept or approve, and there's some messages here, suggestions and news. And what is interesting here, this is native technology. For example, if I'm using here, edit the home screen, I can check for widgets. So there's, let me see, there's widgets here for SAP Mobile Start to, for example, see my sales volume here. So I can add that widget to my screen and I have that here. So it's not a separate browser window, which is not well integrated with the rest of the mobile system, operating system. But this is using all the native capabilities of the native, in this case, iOS, with notifications, widgets, and so on. So this is a big step forward here. You can see a bit of information here. So always also a functionality for watches is available. And you see here, for example, Spotlight integration on iOS, and so on. So this is the entry point to native mobile applications. And again, a video to learn about this if you're interested. And again, an overview, just to recap, we have functionalities for the business user to call up SAP applications in web, in SAP Workzone, or on mobile devices with SAP Mobile Start. We have functionalities to develop own applications with Business Application Studio, for example, or native SDKs for mobile applications. That's on cloud, or local IDEs to develop on your local machine. And we have functionality to adapt standard applications, to use them, but make changes to tailor the applications for your end users. So that was the content. Thank you very much. Don't panic, as they say in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now let's see if you have any questions. So please put your questions in the chat. And I can already see some questions. One is from Niels. ABAP in Business Application Studio or VS Code would be so nice. One IDE to rule them all. Yes, that I understand that. That's why I mentioned this explicitly. So I'm not aware of any changes in that strategy, and I guess moving all the functionality of ABAP development tools in Eclipse to somewhere else would be quite an effort. So it is the situation. ABAP development is in Eclipse and other development is in Business Application Studio. And there's a question, can we create an adaptation project and do some changes of standard Fiori apps on S/4HANA public cloud? Yes, let me just quickly show you the best place to learn about that. The link is in the slides as well. This is the SAP Flexibility All You Need to Know, with capabilities, as I explained, for end users, for key users, and for developers. And these are the adaptation projects. And here we have the features and availability metrics here. And you can see here, I hope you can read that. The rows here show the availability of end user, key user, developer on the different stacks. And this is a bit unusual for SAP UI5 to have statements on different stacks, because normally SAP UI5 is UI only, and it's the same as SAP UI5 in S/4HANA, in SuccessFactors, in BTP, in ECC, everywhere. But with SAP UI5 flexibility, remember, when moving screens and doing some changes, these changes actually need to be stored somewhere. So we need to have a backend to store the changes, a database. So we need implementation in the ABAP platform, in HANA Cloud, and so on. And actually, that is your question. It's not available yet. Your question is exactly this one. So this is yet to come. But this is, of course, also something we will provide. Mobile start, free or cost? I'm not entirely sure. I think it's free, but please, I'm not sure. The links I provided in the material, they should also link to the respective pricing. Sorry, I don't have that information right now. What's the difference between SAP UI5 Freestyle or SAP Fiori? So SAP UI5 Freestyle is a way of developing SAP UI5 applications. So if you want to create a web application based on SAP UI5 with all the values of SAP UI5, you can follow the Freestyle approach, explicit UI5 coding, or follow the Fiori Elements approach, reusing templates and having metadata to control the templates. So that's the UI technology is SAP UI5 with different ways of implementing this. And SAP Fiori, as I mentioned at the very beginning, strictly speaking, SAP Fiori is the design system, definition of the design. And that design can be implemented with different technologies. This SAP Fiori design can be implemented with SAP UI5 or with classic UI technologies or with native mobile technologies. SAP UI5 is one technology option to implement a Fiori design. It's probably the most prominent one, the web one, but just one. Niels is asking for SAP Mobile Start. Is there a way as an admin to pre-configure devices with a correct FRP URL, or does every user has to scan the QR code in WorkZone? I unfortunately don't know, Niels. If you want to follow up, you can send me an email and I'll try to figure this out with my colleagues. I don't know, unfortunately. There's a question. I want to know how to use ARKit in SDK for iOS. I don't know. I can try to follow up with my colleagues if you want, and send me an email. I don't know that at the top of my head, sorry. Are there any other questions? I think we're good in time.
We are definitely good in time. So if you have any other questions, please write them in the chat.
So we're going to provide the slides afterwards.
Definitely. I already wrote in the chat, just bookmark this video. And in the description for this video, you will find a link to the PDF. Just give us a couple of days.
Any other questions?
We have applauses.
Thank you.
No questions so far. So you can either contact Oliver directly. You can also use the comments area underneath the video for any questions that come up at a later time.
Also, maybe if you have feedback to the format, this is a bit an unusual format. 2 hours is a lot in a webinar, right? But we decided to do it this way to give a nice overview of many topics. You can also share your opinion if you find that useful or it was too much. Let us know.
And whether the exercise was useful for you or it disturbed more the flow of the presentation, it would be great to learn about that. We have a question, actually, Oliver, from Niels. Can you see it, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, Niels is asking, there was a news about integration of IBM Watson into SAP Start. Yes, I've seen that yesterday. This will be integrated in WorkZone as well. I don't know about that. So their WorkZone is based on the same technology. I just don't know whether the Watson functionality will also surface in the WorkZone. If you want to follow up, please feel free to send me an email, and I'm trying to figure this out. This is fairly new. I was not, to be honest, I was not prepared on this. That was too new.
And I would like to know, actually, did any one of you do the exercise? And another possibility, if you want to do it after today at your own leisure and have any questions, feel free to contact us. A quick feedback on the exercise would be great. Whether that was helpful for you or not.
Or you needed a break after 1 hour. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Then, if there are no further questions.
Yes, then thank you very much for attending. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Hope you find this useful in one way or the other. Thank you very much.
And a big thanks to you, Oliver, for your excellent presentation. A lot of information and presented in a very clear manner. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Tanya, for running this.
Absolutely. And last but not least, a big thanks to our attendees for joining and for being so interactive. It was really fun having you here. Have a great day. Have a great evening, depending on where you are.
And don't
see you
panic.
soon again. Don't panic.
Thank
Right.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.